This would have been a perfect blast off meme, but I missed my chance. This is awesome. Look, obviously the first story of today is going to be on Graham Platner. It's the major news story of the moment. We're going to be talking about that. Obviously, there have been a sequence of red flags that some valid, some not so valid, regular politics, regular political actors actively coming after what was a Bernie-crat anti-Israel candidate who certainly wasn't thoroughly or properly vetted at all. But this last allegation, hot girls for Toby Doby for South Dakota. I need y'all to be serious for a moment, man. Can we be serious for a moment? Can we just do that? Can we be Toby Derby for South Dakota? Vargentina? VA Argentina? Okay, listen. Yes, the first story that we are going to be talking about today is Graham Platner. Graham Platner, 4-term. What happened to supporting Graham Platner? I don't know. Were you not paying attention to what took place yesterday, where there was a credible rape allegation that came out from not that long ago as well, like from 2021? Gonna talk about that right now, as a matter of fact. So, credible rape allegation comes from credible rape allegation comes out on Politico. It's one of the victim was actually someone who had given a statement to the New York Times, but had not said that it was, did not want it to be reported that it was rape, and she changed her mind, and yeah, it's done. It's over. Put a fork in it, right? The campaign is done. Now, obviously, I'm going to be talking about like what this means for the Senate majority and what this means for Maine in general. Legitimately, what were Platner's qualifications other than endorsed by Bernie and says the right things? Fetterman was the same and Platner could have done the same thing. Qualification sounds like a liberal candidate requirement, but we had no demonstrable history of leftism or advocacy, even normal non-Blackwater work that would ensure he wouldn't just stab you in the back while he got into office. I think that it mostly just stemmed from his, private profile, like his statements in private. But I did talk about his like lack of. There were some people in my community that made it seem as though Graham Platner was, potentially going to run for president or whatever the fuck, and or was the face of this movement, which to which I pushed back on. But none of that matters. Okay. Majority Report enjoyer. Yeah, Graham Platner talked about how Michael Brooks had one-shotted him and changed his worldview, all this stuff. I'm not here to say we told you so or anything like that, and you're not performative or a coward, but is there anything to say about the fact that the character issues were clearly there from the beginning? He invaded Afghanistan 4 times and did Blackwater. Those people are rapists usually already. Here's what I will say. What I will say about Graham Platner is what I've said from the start about Graham Platner. The red flags were there, but these red flags were totally immaterial for the voters in Maine, and that my assessment on this was the silver lining, which is something that I tweeted, I think like right after the Graham Platner announcement, or right after, like this was months in the past. And I've talked about this extensively. The silver lining always was, it seems like people are invested in a candidate that will say those things. Because the reality of the matter is, it's Graham Platner's background and his personal moral failings that did him in. But his campaign outside of that was a phenomenal campaign. That's precisely the reason why he put up insane numbers against the fucking existing centrist hand-selected candidate that is the governor of the state. That's important. That's important analysis. And I'm never going to shy away from giving you that analysis. My job is twofold. And I feel like there's been a lot of crosstalk on my perspective versus my analysis on the race and what this says about the appetite for change. Okay? Trump's 2016 campaign was good, though. See, this is the problem. Why do people do this? Like, why? This is my issue. And then like 98% of the clip compilations out there are always people making like a totally ridiculous comparison, and then me going back to Graham Platner's like policy perspectives and what that means for the overall race, what that means for races all around the country. Many of the candidates you have actually excitedly endorsed and supported and fucking door knocked for, like Maylock Giros, Chris Rabb, Claudia Lisa Avila Chevalier, Claire Valdez, candidates that I actually fucking went out, not only endorsed, but went out, fundraised for, actively campaigned alongside of, and am proud to have played a role with this community in getting elected into fucking office. Okay? Like, here's the difference. When you say something like this, of course I'm going to fucking retaliate and be like, that's a stupid argument. And then people will clip it and be like, Hassan is defending Graham Platner again. I'm not. It's very frustrating. The issues were there. It can't be all about the campaign. It can't be all about the Mainers like them. You know, I'm not shitting on the rest of your work. You do know that. Yes. Okay. In any case, can you look at Tom Tiffany smears on you after having Francesca on? I'm worried. Rural racist Wisconsin is real. I don't know who that is, but we'll look at it in a second. So, I think it was one of my first, one of the first tweets that I had on the Graham Platner issue was more so about like the broad, the broad appetite that people had all around the country, including in a state like Maine. That's a very old state, very white state. And I asked the question that I repeatedly asked over and over again. Does this mean that people have an appetite for the policies, or do they simply like that Graham Platner is a white guy and looks the part? And this was a question that I had for the Mainers. And that question remains to be seen, because the comparison I always made was between Platner with obvious red flags versus Abdullah Syed. So it's seeing a lot of libs defend Platner over establishment pick Janet Mills because he has a leftist platform, and it seems like they're tired of the status quo electability arguments of the Dems. Now imagine if you had a candidate who didn't have a Blackwater CV and a totem cough. Okay? But many people will take the advantage, take the time out of their busy days, they're not usually doing anything else, to make it seem as though I did not have a much more scrutinized opinion on Graham Platner as opposed to many of these other candidates. And I will tell you exactly why. Okay? It's totem, not totem. Okay, whatever. I know. There's a difference that I have, a difference in opinion that I have with many of the people that don't work on these sorts of campaigns in any way, shape, or form with other candidates who will go out and maybe door knock, go out and maybe phone bank, but they're not looking at the situation with a broader vision of winning the Senate majority. There are plenty of people in this coalition in the Democratic Party that are dog shit, okay? Policy-wise, background-wise, just horrible overall. many people that I'm not going to actively go out and endorse, but many Democratic senators, for example, that have to be a part of this coalition, regardless, just to have the numbers and the seats. Okay? Because at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, a Democratic representative or a Democratic senator is going to be better than a Republican one. Okay? It's that simple. And Graham Platner was no different. But to simply say that this was just a lesser evil harm reduction attitude would be also incorrect. For Graham Platner's race, what I was interested in always was the fact that he was an unashamed left populist. Now, the problem that comes along with that is that his stink and his background and the things that he did will now be slammed into every other Bernie endorsed candidacy, which is devastating. Okay? 100%. Actually, now just a shamed left populist? Yeah, well, that's true. So, am I wrong to have made the assessment that Graham Platner, given his policies, regardless of his red flags, was still a better choice than Susan Collins and Janet Mills? No. Okay? With the current information that we have on Graham Platner, obviously that's an entirely different predicament. If Graham Platner had credible accusations of conducting war crimes in the same way that he has a credible accusation of rape, then that would have been irredeemable as well. Okay? But for a lot of people, their assessment directly stemmed from the fact that he went and did 4 tours in Afghanistan and Iraq, and then joined Blackwater. For me, the Blackwater thing was the biggest red flag. Okay? The Blackwater thing and the Totenkopf tattoo was major red flags, should have been seen in the vetting process, and it should have absolutely been a red flag that was, that would have stopped him from running. But I think, and I can only make this assessment because I have no connection to these people that hand selected this candidate, they saw a guy who was capable of delivering a charismatic speech, which, for the record, regardless of his immoral nature, that part still remains to be true, especially in a state like Maine, that he was a candidate that was capable of exciting a lot of older white voters. Okay? Now, there's varying degrees of support that were thrown in the direction of Graham Platner. I myself, of course, were at times talking about how ridiculous some of the campaigns were coming from people who were openly pro-Israel and were taking that position because they were pro-Israel. It wasn't because of it wasn't because they had seen red flags or anything. It was very clear that they were like, he's anti-Israel. Graham Platner is what do you call it? Graham Platner is anti-Israel. I'm pro-Israel. That's it. I hate it. Right? Why are your chats being modded? Because you're fucking linking a psychopathic cyber stalker of mine's manifesto in the chat. And as a 7-month subscriber, you should know better than to do that. That's why. That's why you're getting modded. If Platner were a Republican, his rape allegation would have helped his campaign. If Platner was a Republican, he probably would not drop out. No one would demand he drop out. What makes him a psychopath and a cyber stalker? I don't know. His last 6 years of social media footprint, day in, day out, endless coverage of every little thing that I do from a negative framework. That's a pretty good assessment of the situation, I think. his cyber stalking and also his psychopathic behavior. What does this mean for the Dem majority? We don't know yet. I don't know who they're going to put forth. But what I will say is this. My position on this issue from October 21st, 2025 is the exact same right now. Okay? My position on this is the exact same. The fact that there is a lot of momentum, the fact that there was a lot of momentum behind this guy, a unknown entity who was able to defeat in the primaries the governor of the state, okay, the establishment hand-selected candidate that the field was cleared for, regardless of those red flags, like the Totenkopf tattoo, the Blackwater CV, and some less favorable things that he had said on Reddit many years ago, right? Regardless of all of that, he actually fucking destroyed. He destroyed Janet Mills. Bill's Mafia till the bitter end. There's an important lesson there, okay? That's what I'm interested in. That's what I've been interested in, and that's what I will continue being interested in. Now, the lesson could be one of two things. One, it could literally be because he's a white guy who said that, he had redeemed himself, he had gotten better, he had issues with PTSD, like he was capable of telling a really good story. Okay, why you stick with Morris Katz for Platner and Brand Lander? Who is Cyberstalker? Why do I stick with Morris Katz? Why do you get your information from insane people? I have no connection to the Fight Agency, and I have maintained the position that Fight Agency makes banger ads. That's it. They're an ad agency. They're not a political organization. I don't know why people are trying to tie me to the Fight Agency. It's an ad agency, and they make really good ads. Like, I stand by that. They make really, really great ads. Okay? But they're an ad agency. They're not a political organization. They're not a political movement. They're an ad agency. And not only are they an ad agency, they're an ad agency. They've worked with like the likes of Michael Lasher. Okay. Perhaps that's the best that's the best proof that they are not like a part of a political movement, but more so just an ad agency, right? There is a level of mercenary work that you do in that situation. And I'm sure there's plenty of great people. And I think there are some great people there, some wonderful people that work there, but ultimately it is an ad agency, right? And before people say like, oh, the Maine DSA endorsed Grant Platner, they did not. They suggested him. Okay? DSA never endorsed Grant Platner. They simply suggested him on the ballot as an acceptable substitute to Janet Mills and to Susan Collins, which is my position as well. Okay? Recommendations are not endorsements, and even endorsements do not mean that someone is a DSA candidate in general. You could be a DSA endorsed candidate like Troy Jackson was for governor. That doesn't mean Troy Jackson is, I don't think Troy Jackson was a part of the DSA. Right? But I think the important lesson here is, once again, to demand more proper vetting and not to go out to bat, even to the degree that I did on campaigns like Grant Platner's. Even though I hedged my commentary over and over again and had many private and some public disagreements with the likes of even FD Signifier, Cavernickel as well, and defended certain people like Chris Rabb when they criticized Graham Platner, defended FD's criticisms of Graham Platner. I still thought that he would be a better substitute for Susan Collins or for Janet Mills. That's it. Hedging doesn't work in Clipchimp land. Of course, it doesn't matter. But if you're thinking like, oh, you showed the same level of support, you lend your entire audience and your whole ass level of support to Graham Platner, it's not true. As people have seen already, and as I talked about as well, there was a point where I wanted to interview Graham Platner because I had certain questions of Graham Platner. And here's one of those clips. I'm glad that someone at least found it. Okay. This is the reasons why people like him. When are you having him on? He's not. I don't think he's going to come on. He wanted to come on. Initially, his team wanted to bring him on, but y'all yelled and cried so much and pissed in your pants and farted that I couldn't even have a conversation with him about his background and get to know him better and get to understand where he was coming from. I don't think he's ever coming on because like 100%. See, but this is it. We made fun of a Nazi. Brother, you have to be a little bit more tactical about this stuff, okay? You have to, I would have liked to have a one-on-one conversation about that and numerous other things. I wasn't going to glaze him. And that's now the reason why he's not coming on. It's all good, I mean, I don't really give a shit. Like I said, it's out of my hands. We're Pills Mafia, baby. We're Pills Mafia. Graham Platner is literally the liberal Donald Trump people have been looking for. Yeah, that's still true, by the way. He is. Yeah, no, he is the candidate for the moment. He is the leader of the American woke chud movement. Anyone who actually watches the coverage can see the difference. No, there's plenty of people who are in this community as well who came in here and would regularly yell at me, but they would make it seem as though like my level of commentary or support for Graham Platner was the same as like Abdul Al-Sayed. You know what I mean? Like that's, or my level of support for Daria Lisa or Chris Rabb, people like that. That's just not true. And there's varying degrees of social democrats, leftists on the internet that did offer a lot more support. Not that it matters. Like I certainly made my position known, which is that Graham Platner was a preferable candidate to Susan Collins and Janet Mills. None of these guys ever actually countered that for some reason. And it's still fucking true. You know what I mean? Well, it's not true any longer, but it was that conversation that consistently led to people clipping shit to be like, you defended him a lot. You defended him a lot. No, I didn't. I defended the idea that he is, at least at the time, for the information that we had, a better candidate pushing for better policies than Susan Collins and Pills Mafia. So that's where we're at, or that's where I was at. Okay. As a longtime fan, I think you need to reflect on how you take criticism, especially from the left. Not everyone is a wrecker or a Maoist third worlder. Sometimes they just disagree with you. I know. But we're playing a little bit of rewriting of history here as well. Because the people that were coming in here with criticisms weren't like Sean the Black's criticisms. They weren't like FD Signifier's criticisms. Their criticisms were Graham Platner raped and ate children in Afghanistan specifically did torture in Abu Ghraib, and you love doing torture to the Iraqi children, you have the death of 1 million Iraqi babies on your hands. You love when Iraqi children die. You love when Iraqi children die. That's why you're supporting Grant Platner. That's why you want Grant Platner to be your father. What the fuck? Sean never says shit like that? Yeah, exactly. Which is why I'm saying we can have reasonable fucking criticisms and disagreements amongst one another. Okay? But of course, if someone comes in and says that, I'm going to be like, you're an insane person. That's the whole point. And for some weird reason, people do this like weird Mott and Bailey where they go, well, there was some reasonable disagreements in chat with you, and not like me yelling at the people who were like, every person who's been a troop at any point in their lives deserves the death penalty. Okay? You're creating a non-existent person? Oh, come on. Come on, brother. That's not a straw man. It's like, under normal circumstances, I like embellishing and I like exaggerating because I'm supposed to be someone who's an entertaining figure. This is the one instance where there is a very specific tendency in this community, a very specific slant. Because, like, look, Dylan Saba, who is my friend, who was very critical of Grant Platner and kept repeatedly saying over and over again, this guy's a fucking Blackwater mercenary from 2018. Of course he's got fucking major red flags. I don't know what the fuck people are saying. I agree with him. I respect his position. I agree with him. I agree with the red flags myself. But for me, as far as like a potential for a broader coalition, as far as pushing for a left populist that I did not think had this many irredeemable qualities. Let's be real. You know, it was fine to hedge for me to say, hey, look, it's out of my hands, as I did back then. It's out of my hands. If the people of Maine like them, the people of Maine like them. Okay? That's it. Yeah. And it's so strange that there are a lot of people who are running victory laps as though like Grant Platner is currently dropping out because like he is Bad Empanada said Morris Katz was my handler, my Jewish handler, Morris Katz. Is that the argument that we're making now? Bad Empanada? Come on, man. It's ironic because they also, on the one hand, say that I'm like working with Fight Agency, which is not true. It's fucking ridiculous to say that. And not only that, but also, like Morris Katz is 23 years old, okay? When I started doing political commentary 13 years ago, Morris Katz was like 10. Okay? What are we talking about? He's not 23, he's 24. Okay. And not only that, but I think he's a great ad guy, for the record. I think he's a great ad guy. I think most people who are good faith are coming from the argument that obviously a war piggy who made like 5 tours and didn't have enough, so much that he enlisted as a mercenary and got a Nazi tattoo, was bound to come out as a rapist or something. This is obvious for a lot of people, and apparently it is not to you. That's not saying all veterans need to go through the gallows. No, I agree. But the problem is, I also shared that same level of skepticism, but it wasn't enough for me to just like come out and be like, fuck Grant Platner, fuck Bernie Sanders, fuck the entire broad left populist movement. They're all a bunch of Zionists. Okay? And no, it wasn't obvious that he would be a rapist either. Okay? That's the difference. And now that we have evidence that he is, it's over. But do you understand, like, Do you understand where I'm coming from? Because it's not like I didn't hedge. It's not like I didn't fucking. It's not like I came out of the gate swinging and was like, he's the greatest thing that has ever happened. He's the face of this movement. He's the best guy of all time. Okay. It's just like there are varying degrees of support that I offer certain candidates. Graham Platner didn't get any of that, with the exception of whenever people would come and tell me that Janet Mills or Susan Collins would be an acceptable substitute, I said, no, I don't think that's the case, with the evidence that I had, with the information that I had at the time. And when new information comes in, we change our perspective. Yeah. And when the Nazi tattoo came out, I spent a good deal of time talking about how that paired up with the Blackwater mercenary thing was a bridge too far. Okay? But that's it. If you were expecting me to stand in opposition with one member of this, one candidate that they put forward that I had no say in whatsoever, while, taking somewhat of a somewhat of an arm's length, while still clearing the air on, some of the more ridiculous attacks. Not the Blackwater stuff, but the more ridiculous shit, calling him a commie, this is bad, all this stuff. I was always going to do that. I'm always going to tell you what my actual honest to God opinion is. It's that simple. I think the support for Platner and Valdez were vastly different, and I don't know how obvious criticisms of Platner weren't plain to see. Yeah. I have a 20-minute screen record where you were telling chatters to have charitability for being a soldier and how many people in this community have changed. Yes, that's a stance that I will always maintain. I believe that. And a lot of people don't agree with that. And they're using Graham Platner as proof that, it's just veterans are not to be trusted. Okay? I'm not a troop fucker in the way that Democrats are, where they're like, oh my God, Amy McGrath is going to be a wonderful candidate or anything like that, right? I'm not one of those guys. I'm just agnostic. No one will mention Adam Hamawi, though. No, these are the same people that also were shitting on Adam Hamawi. In any case, there's still, this is still up in the air. The real point of the conflict is that military vets cannot debate. That's really it. People don't really give a fuck about Platner or the victim. Exactly. And it's interesting because a lot of the conversation, a lot of the anger and resentment is not even coming from in this community. It's coming from, people who are like, we told you so. Why didn't you listen to us? You should have just outright shit on him from the start instead of, having your criticisms, but still saying look, he's a better candidate than Susan Collins. He's a better candidate than Susan Collins and Janet Mills, right? You shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have said that at all, which is not the case. I mean, with the information that we had, he had a lot of red flags, but even outside of that, without any sort of credible accusation, he still was better than Susan Collins at the time, and also Susan Collins and also Janet Mills. So, I wish you and other progressives had treated the Platner race like New York 12. Oh, that's a fair shake. I mean, if you're talking about the rest of the online progressive left, I can't speak for their varying degrees of support. I'm just simply telling you where I'm coming from. Okay? But I am understanding of where they're coming from as well. I know what their assessment is. New York 12 was the Michael Asher race, for those of you who don't know, which we just did not talk about at all. I think the level of support I gave Platner was even less than Brad Lander, honestly. And I'm fine with Brad Lander being a part of this broader movement, despite my disagreements with Brad, right? On certain issues. It's tougher, though, because it was a Senate race. Yeah, it's a huge deal. At the end of the day, I don't know where this will go. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know where this, I don't know who the replacement is going to be. I'm going to obviously continue working on the candidates that I have been working with. But if you are trying to understand like what my assessment is, or if you saw what my skepticism was, but also saw a bunch of clips of me being like, I'm riding with riding with Grant Platner or whatever. Well, I'm here to clarify my position. And I know that no matter what I say, there's going to be a fucking barrage of misinformation out there, especially because no matter what, when I try to offer you any sort of nuanced critique or any sort of nuanced analysis, people want black and white. People don't want to hear. People don't want to hear what the nuanced perspective is on this. Morris Katz apparently has not reached out to the New York Post. His team is delusional, this person said, noting that Katz, a former campaign advisor to New York City Mayor Zohar Mamdani, is still recommending Platner remain in the race. Morris Katz says, to be very clear, no one in campaign deliberations or familiar with my thinking is talking to the New York Post. Sam Parker tells me Platner should drop out as sees Troy Jackson as a clear replacement that satisfied the needs for credentials and embodies some of the populist policies. I mean, Troy Jackson is not a great replacement for Grant Platner. Like, I will be honest with you. I just don't know what the alternatives are. I don't know what the alternatives are. We'll see what they put up. We'll see who pushes for what. And we'll see where it goes. Choose me, I'll move, buddy. Yeah. As someone from the global south, I appreciate everything you've done. P.S. You are not going to get charitability from the people who are just looking to score internet points. I know. Yeah, I mean, all the fucking accusations that I'm like, mercenary for the DNC or a mercenary for a fight agency. These are fucking ridiculous accusations coming from the schizo left conspiracy theorists. And there's not much else I can say. You can see the deliberate actions that I've taken. And it's really funny because those very same people will then turn around and will literally be like, oh, Hassan wanted to work desperately with Graham Platner. It's his campaign that didn't want to work with him. And then they don't work through the motions of that. Like, they don't work through why that didn't actually happen. They don't ask the question why the Platner campaign had no issues working with, like, David Sirota, Majority Report, numerous other outlets, but for some reason they just chose to avoid being interviewed by someone like myself. They don't actually, because if they were to investigate a little bit further, they would understand exactly what I said. They would arrive at the same conclusion, that I suspect the skepticism coming from their camp was because I was going to ask him about his background in Blackwater, his tattoo, the decision-making process there. And they didn't want that. They didn't want to have that conversation at all. And in that conversation that I had with Chet, where I'm like, you guys have to be a little bit more tactful. I'm saying, like, we have to be a little bit more tactful as far as, like, how much we yell about certain things, because then it undermines the opportunity to do proper vetting for a campaign, proper vetting for a candidate in the process of an interview. Okay? That's what that statement is about. That's why I say we have to be a little bit more tactful. Your haters don't even defend Daria, Claire, Corey, Rab, Hamaweed. They're unserious people. Yeah, it's all a gotcha attempt. So yeah. Bro, you just showed a clip on which you were complaining they canceled because of chatters, not because of your opinions and doubts. See, this is what I mean. Brother, do you not understand the words that were coming out of my mouth, even in that fucking clip? What are you talking about? Yes, I said, you guys chirp too much. You wouldn't let me fucking cook. Hello? How do you think... Are you stupid? How do you think a campaign views a potential interview as, like, maybe contentious? They obviously look at the way that, you know, my community reacts to the fucking candidate. And no, I didn't even want to fucking cook him. I just wanted to investigate further, like, ask some serious questions about, like, where he stands. Okay? What the fuck is this? Gasparino? Is Hassan Piker the one who calls the shots in the Democratic Party?
That Hassan Piker has a voice. I mean, have you ever listened to that guy? Some of his theories about everything from Marxism, economic Marxism, to cultural Marxism, to Israel.
He's way.
So this guy is their standard bearer, and I just found it fascinating. People said, "Oh, it's all over for Platinum," because Hassan Piker came out against him. I'm like, Hassan, he's the guy that calls the shots in the Democratic Party.
I'm not.
Well, the people Jackie's talking about in the primary.
It's so funny that these guys have, like, invented this alternative reality. I'm not this person. Why does nobody give a shit about my perspective on this? Ironically enough, I'm not this fucking person, man. You guys keep saying it, and then you're like, I'm scared about the alternative reality that I have envisioned in my mind.
I think to a large degree,
but a lot of people, yeah, but that's what I mean. They are controlling. The left is controlling. The left has replaced the establishment as the driving force.
Did you just say that Troy Jackson isn't a good option because you said yesterday that he's him? I'm saying that he embodies a lot of the populist qualities in his legislative track record. But ultimately, I mean, he's not a very charismatic guy. I don't know what's going to happen in Maine. I have no idea. I have no understanding. I'm just telling you, you know, this is all happening in real time. It's not that he's too old. It's just that he reads as too old. But when you look at someone like Troy Jackson, who has a legislative track record that's very good, like fairly reliable in a state like Maine, but then you look at the way he carries himself, and then you look at the way that Graham Platner was doing all these fucking rallies, and you develop a better understanding of why so many people in Maine fucking voted for this dude, okay, regardless of the red flags. And that is important to identify, because what comes next will need to muster up those very same forces that propelled Graham Platner into the top slot in Maine. Okay? Do you understand why I'm saying this? Because the reality of the matter is, while a lot of these establishment Democrats have been flexing, have been talking about how, it was actually the stupid consultant class wearing Carhartt for vibes that convinced everyone to vote for Graham Platner, what they fail to recognize is Mainers voted for him, okay? White, older Mainers voted for the dude. Do you understand? I said, I'm losing my mind. The consulting class and establishment Dems cleared the field for the governor, and the people of Maine voted for the dude with a Totenkopf tat who was anti-Israel and pro-Medicare for all instead. I agree you should drop out, but this argument is so unbelievably stupid. And you have to identify why that happened, okay? Analysis does not equal endorsement. You have to identify why that happened. If you simply say, my least favorite characters in the establishment, or my least favorite characters that are anti-establishment content creators are the reason why this guy fucking won, you're a moron, okay? Why is no one taking this shit seriously? I know why a lot of people on the internet want to score cheap political points by using a real instance of rape to do a gotcha moment. But what I cannot comprehend is why serious people who are supposed to be serious analysts are not looking at the situation and recognizing the changes that have taken place within the base of support for the Democratic Party. Okay? I genuinely asked this, and I don't mean to be an ass, I promise, but why is it fine that he committed atrocities abroad because he later said it was bad, but when he's raped someone, that's the red line? Because okay, do you want my perspective, or do you want the actual, adult analysis, the sober analysis of how people view someone who's a veteran? Because no one fucking cares in the United States of America when someone is a veteran. That's not seen as a negative thing, okay? That is just a negative association in this community and this community alone. That's it, okay? Like, no one associates someone who went on 4 tours, even as a machine gunner for the Marines, as someone that has done atrocities, okay? That's it. That's it. They see veterans as heroes. They don't see veterans as war criminals. They see veterans as heroes. So if you're asking me what my assessment is on every veteran, I treat every single person, including every single veteran, as an individual. I don't treat them as a monolith. I don't treat them as all baby-killing warmongers. I look at it on a case-by-case basis. That's it. That's it. And with Graham Platner, the biggest red flag, wasn't the fact that he did 4 tours, even though that is, not great, obviously. But the biggest red flag was that he, as recently as 2018, joined Constellas, the private security firm, to do embassy security, which is like the lowest level. Ironically enough, probably less war crimes took place as he was doing embassy security, as opposed to like potentially being a machine gunner and a grunt, right? Having said that, the decision-making process there is what matters to me. he saw Blackwater and he saw the war crimes that Blackwater had engaged in. And he was like, this is it. This is I'm going to go and join this. I'm going to join this group. That was a huge red flag. The other red flag, obviously, was, again, the decision-making process that caused him to go and get a fucking Totenkopf tattoo and keep that shit on his body for a very long time. Okay? In some respects, I feel like we are doing the same thing that like Neera Tanden does, right? When we say, why the fuck do the Mainers not care that he was a mercenary, is almost the same like demand for disciplining the base instead of understanding where the base is and trying to, find a more acceptable substitute. It's the same disciplining operation that Zionists do when they're like, why do people hate Israel? Just because we're morally on the correct side of this argument does not change that reality that like you have to, what do I always say? You have to go to where the masses are. You have to speak the language of the masses. And you have to appeal to the needs of the masses if you want to build a mass movement, okay? You can't sit around and be like, why do people not see every veteran as a fucking child murderer? They should see every veteran as a child murderer, which, by the way, I don't do that regardless, okay? That's it. A lot of this conversation still goes back to please be normal. It's ironic that people are mad about a guy who got banned for being a person who got banned on this platform for discriminating against the protected class. Unfortunately, on this platform, veterans are a protected class. And I did discriminate against a U.S. representative at the time in 2019 who happens to be a veteran. People think I got banned for saying America deserved bleep. I actually got banned for discriminating against the protected class, which veterans are. Okay? In any case, yes, on Twitch, the terms of service is so that veterans are seen as a protected class. For those of you who don't know, now you know. This combo pisses me off so much. Like, Maine voters chose Graham for the left position, and all you did was say the truth that eating bread, Graham, is better than eating shit, Mills or Collins. And it turns out that the bread was moldy, and now the moldy bread is just as bad as eating shit, and you're throwing it away. Yes. So, that was good. Can you define what exactly is normal? You were describing it like an abstract concept, which is difficult to grasp. Can we get like a checklist or something? Chatter. That's funny. That is the most autistic question I've ever received in my entire life. Respect. No, I can't give you what a checklist of normal is, okay? Sometimes we just got to mask it, okay? I do it all the time, and I think you can too. I believe in you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have like a checklist of what normal is. I think it's something that you just learn by being out and about and being around people. Obviously, and just like getting a better grasp of how the average person operates, how the average person thinks, where the average person is, right? Like Nick Pollum is not a normal person. He's a Twitch streamer, right? We are far from the, we are very far away from the normal individual. Now, having said that, Nick Pollum's conversation I had with him yesterday and his opinions on politics are probably closer to the uninitiated, politically uneducated normie. A guy who's just kind of like, I don't really understand what's going on, but I feel like there's some corruption and some foul play taking place in American politics. Like that's closer to the average person's understanding of politics than every single individual in this chat. And sometimes it's important for us to recognize that when we have conversations in the real world. Okay? Yeah, Evan had a good take on this, but he said people talk about media literacy, but I think we need to start talking about moral literacy. Hassan has made a few edgy jokes here and there, but Asmongold's daily, unironically talking about why killing people is great. There's no comparison here.
Well,
be honest. Do you think Asmon knows?
Well,
be honest. Do you think Asmon knows a single thing that I just explained to you?
Maybe, but the thing about Asmon, he does have a memory that, like, if he sees something, he'll remember it. Like, he has like a photographic memory. So I don't know.
There is fucking 0% chance that he knows a single damn thing that I just mentioned to you.
I mean, he's talking about it all day. So what's he talking about then? He must
He's
know.
just fucking rehashing whatever he's seen on Twitter and then grokking it.
I don't know. I think he might know. One of these days, you and him have to have a conversation.
I would love that. I
don't want to be there, but I think
balls in his court. Balls in his court.
You know, I really do.
Also, people can talk. They can just talk out of their ass. He knows.
I mean, he's a good. You and him both. And that's why I put you guys in S tier. You guys have the ability to talk about things and keep people interested more than most people. I can't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't deny that. You keep people interested.
Yes, I'm not denying that I can do that. Here's my struggle when you say we can't just tell normies that veterans are baby murderers, is that babies did get murdered by American soldiers, a lot of them. I know, dude. I know. But ask yourself, is this the appropriate vector for advocacy? And if the answer is yes, please reconsider. Okay? This is why I say you have to come at this from a point of understanding of where the masses are, what is normalized in American society, in American culture, and work your way through that process. Because there's never been a moment where I'm like, join the military. It's great. They are, the most important defensive force that's ever existed. I don't do any of that shit. I tell people all the time that the recruitment practices are unbelievably predatory. The American military is not a force for good around the world, and that we should dramatically reconsider the way we approach these sorts of conversations. We approach these sorts of concepts. Okay, the output of the U.S. military is not to be the world police. That's an overall good thing, but to advance the interests of the capitalist class. That's clear. Okay. But that doesn't mean you can run around and be like, they're murdering children with regular frequency all the time. Like it's insane. Not untrue, but think of how many vets have done absolutely no reflection on their service and continue to use their discount at Denny's like they did a good job. I know, but that's not who you're trying to talk to. You're trying to talk to other people. You're trying to talk to other people that are not the relentless hog veteran who thinks he actually did the awesome thing of like murdering Muslim children or whatever. Okay? That's not who you are talking to when you're having these conversations. And you have to always remember, other people hear you. Okay? Other people hear you and go, ugh, what the fuck did he say? That's crazy. They don't go, wow, this guy is clearly on the right side of this argument, and now I'm going to seriously reconsider my worldview. A lot of people, unfortunately, never do that. They don't want to push for a vision in the affirmative by, just going through the motions a little bit, moderating your messaging a little bit. It's fucking crazy. And I wish people would do that. And many of you love the guys who do that, right? Who do that even better than I ever could. Zoran Mamdani is a great example. You guys all love him. He does this perfectly well. He liberalizes his worldview to make it appealing and to be at the forefront of this movement. And you guys love it when he does it. You love it when I do it as well, or when I see success in this thing that we've been trying to fucking build for years. But you never want to think about the work that and the messaging that it took to get to this point. Do you see what I mean? That's it. I want to watch the FD Signifier red flag video and see what lessons we can learn from it, as he was, alongside Sean the Black, a very loud critic of Graham Platner, which many people, I think, misunderstood his point as well. I talked to FD privately many times over leading up to this video as well. Okay. We got Benjamin Netanyahu speaking to CNN, by the way, on the docket too. We're going to get to all of that and more. But look, there were a lot of people who said these red flags are irredeemable. Okay. I was not one of those people until recently. Okay. You're not going to like the lessons because it's about white supremacy. No, first of all, see, this is what I mean. A lot of people misunderstand my position on this. I have made that argument all the way back in fucking November 2025. What did I tell you? You have seen me talk about this, especially in comparison to a candidate that I actually was very excited about and had endorsed and have been working with versus Graham Platner. The Abdul El-Sayed versus Graham Platner argument comes to mind instantly. This is something that I said on the Pod Johns' podcast all the way back in November 2025. Let's run the tape one more time. We shall see if the liberals are more forgiving of guys like Graham Platner because he's a white dude, and they think that is like the primary version of electability for liberals in general.
Yeah.
Or is it because he came out of the gate swinging with very leftist, like left flank policies, and that's the reason why they're forgiving of him. And I think the contest I'm paying close attention to is Abdul El-Sayed, a person who has none of the red flags whatsoever, another person that basically has an infallible reputation and has actually more experience in politics as well. He's run for the governors. He failed to defeat. I think it was Whitmer that he failed to defeat on a Medicare for all campaign, and he is the real deal, right? And he's also another early Bernie pick. He's also anti-Zionist. We shall see if liberals are just as forgiving of a brown guy that is running on a very similar campaign to Graham Platner.
Without the tattoo.
Yeah, without the Nazi tattoo, but he's a brown guy. Does that mean that it's like scarier? My point is a white dude with a Nazi tattoo.
I think we know the answer, don't we?
Well, I
think we know the answer.
No, I don't.
As a brown person, I think I know the answer.
No, I think that's defeatist. And that's, I don't abide by that. I recognize that there's a hurdle, right? There's a hurdle, there's a higher threshold, but you can climb it. And you can make up for that higher threshold by instilling messaging discipline and then not stepping on any landmines to the best of your ability, and also just focusing on issues that the largest base actually care about. That's why I always say center the working class, because the working class, even if they don't self-identify as the working class. ProMaster says, I was a child in Iraq during the war. I didn't like Platner and didn't support him, but I also didn't mind flipping one voice to be pro-Palestine / anti-Israel. We need all the support we can get. My thought was maybe he is bad, but a bad person against Israel is better than Collins. That was my assessment as well. That's it. And a lot of people treated that assessment as an outright, like, he is your favorite person. And there's so much evidence to suggest that I had tremendous scrutiny for Graham Platner's campaign. But if you look at just the clips of me arguing against chatters who were making insane points, like much broader points about every fucking veteran being a certain way or all this shit. Dog, I'm sorry, but you just white-splained work twice as hard for half the reward to a woman of color. Dog, don't you think maybe I have a little bit of background in this too? Yeah, I'm saying that because I fucking believe it. Yes, I know it. What do you mean? Hello? I'm doing that in defense of Abdul El Sayed. I'm like, look, we know how it is. I understand how it is, but it's not unfixable. It's not unsolvable. I said this about Kamala Harris too, when people were like, oh, she's a black woman. Kamala Harris is a black woman. It'll never work. And I was like, no, it doesn't matter. That's a hurdle, but it's one that you can climb. It's just going to be a harder hill to climb, but it doesn't matter. It's still climbable. What am I supposed to do? Yeah, Zahra Mamdani is proof that you can do that, right? I don't think we just cut, great candidacy short like Abdul El Sayed, specifically because he's not a white man. That's it. But yeah, all jokes aside, lesser evil voter across the board, right? Leading up to the recent allegations, obviously, recent allegations aside, and I think, as I've said over and over again, I think he should drop out. You literally brag about the Rhodes Scholarship named after white supremacist Cecil Rhodes, and you ignored our criticism of Platner. You have anti-blackness. You do work on it. I'm pointing to the credentials of a brown Egyptian Muslim man. This has got to be a joke, right? You can't be this Jay Sakai pilled. I don't think. This is a joke, right? Please tell me you're fucking baiting and you're joking. Like, there's no, like, you think that has anything to do with my assessment of Cecil Rhodes or Rhodesia or white supremacy when I point to the credentials of a person by naming the scholarship that he received? I can't understand. There's no way. I don't think you're being serious. I'm just going to move on from this. Especially because I'm literally talking about Abdul Rahman El Sayed. Okay? I'm talking about Abdul Rahman El Sayed. And how white people oftentimes will overlook the background and credentials of a person just because his name is Abdul Rahman El Sayed. Chatter bringing back secret woke 0.1 alpha. Abdurrahman Muhammad El Sayed. It's not a joke. It's coming from a black woman. Please stop uplifting that scholarship. Okay. Sure. I apologize. I did a Bodies and Spaces. I apologize. I should have never brought up the Rhodes Scholarship that Abdurrahman El Sayed has when talking about how he is unbelievably credentialed, far more credentialed than any other person running right now. I have a lot of learning to do. Thank you. Yeah, it's true.
Senate primary.
So Noah Rothman, this is from the National Review. Noah Rothman went on the Jake Tapper CNN broadcast to talk about Mallory McMorrow. This is like right before the Platner stuff happened. And we're gonna get to this in a second. And I also have an interesting take on this too, but we'll do that in a second. Does anyone have the FD signifier video? What gift? Here.
Someone said, why are we talking about Graham Platner? Because I've been hearing about this.
No, not this one. Not this one. Doesn't he have another video on it? Not a recent one. No, this is the recent one called White Fatigue, right?
What
this
I'm
is
trying to make clear here is that
no, this is from 3 hours ago. I'm not. Isn't there one that's like? I think, yeah, this is the one. Why I left the white
I'm
left.
putting all white leftists on timeout until further notice. I've been hanging around y'all too long, and now I have lice. And black people shouldn't get lice. That it doesn't work like that for us. Lice in America cannot survive in black hair. Y'all probably don't realize that because a lot of y'all don't be knowing shit about us, but we already off topic. And the fact that I be explaining black people shit is kind of why I have this problem in the first place. We're going to start out talking Graham Platner a little bit because he's a great framing tool for everything I want to get off my chest. I want to be really clear. I'm going to say that a lot in this video. I don't like this dude. He feels like a seasonal villain from a prestige political drama like House of Cards or Scandal or something. I'm not saying he's a Nazi, but he's at least like Hydra or Order of the Cyclops for those of you that watched Watchmen all those years ago. He just is that guy, and it's incredibly obvious to anyone who isn't some of y'all. And this isn't just taking issue with his military service. I don't have a purity politic toward anything, really, if you know me, but definitely not ex-military people on the left. I am anti-American military. Like, I don't want to misconstrue that. But there are also Black Panthers who were ex-military. The American military spends billions of dollars marketing and propagandizing young people across this country. So I try to hold a nuanced position for how that works. But I wouldn't apply this to Platner. 4 tours and Blackwater and a Nazi tattoo is a lot. And I know that's not a hot take. I know even more moderate folks would agree with that. So I have to wonder why and how is Platner being pushed so hard by the establishment and the online left in general? Platner is the latest project out of the Fight Agency. The Fight Agency is a political consultancy that was started by some ex-Bernie Sanders, ex-John Fetterman folks. And in recent years, they've been behind the success of Zohran Mamdani, as well as people like Dan Osborne, Bob Brooks, etc. And aside from Zohran Mamdani, you kind of see what's happening here. All we're missing is Hank Hill. Like, the main, mostly valid argument that I will get about Platner is that he's one of the few folks amongst the Democrats that vows to pull military support from Israel.
Not a single taxpayer dollar should be spent.
By the way, a lot of people consistently point to me talking about Graham Platner being an exceptional communicator as like defense. That's literally the reason why he won. Okay? He is very good at telling a fucking story and playing a role. I don't know if FD will agree with me on this, but like that's why he fucking won the goddamn primary against the established name that is the fucking governor of this state. Okay? That's just true. It's objectively true. Okay? I don't think this should be beyond the fucking pale.
On arming and defending a country that commits a genocide.
And that is extremely important for Palestinian liberation. But I do have to ask, why are we being asked to not just tolerate Platner for that reason, but to see him almost as the future of the Democratic Party and maybe even the left? Why has he become the darling of the online, predominantly white left in this time frame? Why did the Fight Agency scout him in the first place? It's because the Fight Agency knows that this image of white American exceptionalism and especially masculinity is still highly valued amongst the white masses. He's doing a reskin of the Marlboro Man, or better yet, like Don Draper, Joel Miller from The Last of Us. Literally, he looks like Walter White. And I want you to remember, all of these characters were villains. And historically, it's always straight white men that...
No one ever said that on the left side? No, I mean, I think there were a lot of people who were glazing the shit out of Graham Platner, and that's what he's referencing. Like, look, and FD will attest to this, both in private correspondence, but also my public statements, that like I always hedged my Graham Platner commentary with his red flags, but you know, there were definitely a lot of people that were very excited about how charismatic he presented himself as.
Fail to realize that fact about those characters. And when you're not a straight white male,
Like you've been glazing Platner for months. If there is no difference in my commentary on Graham Platner versus what I've said and what I've done for Daria Liza, Chris Rabb, Claire Valdez, Adam Hamawi, Abdul Al Sayed, why have I been doing any of this? Why have I been doing any of this? You hedge, but come on, man. But like, why have I been doing any of this shit? Did you see the same level of excitement, the same level of support that any number of different people received? Or was it just me arguing against chatters like yourself that would sometimes make very stupid comparisons? Like, oh, well, why not Kamala Harris then? What did I tell you? If Kamala Harris had the same platform as Graham Platner, she would have won, okay? And yes, I would have fucking door knocked for her. Like I said, if Kamala Harris came out swinging against Israel's genocide, what did I tell you? I was like, it's too significant of a race to just fucking ignore.
you always take note of those types of fans. They may not be the worst people in the world, but they're people to observe. But the left falling for the same trick like this is not surprising when you realize that white leftists in America have never consistently had a halfway decently developed racial analysis. And this is just a historical pattern at this point. Again, shout out to a book I've been reading from Brian Quoba, Hubert Harrison, The Forbidden Genius of Black Radicalism. Hubert Harrison was a lesser known black socialist who worked and wrote in the same eras as Booker T. Washington, Du Bois, and Garvey, and was to the left of all of them during that time, including Du Bois.
I don't think Platner's popularity up here is due to his Israel take as much as it's due to his healthcare take. No, I agree. For sure.
But in this, he also found himself confounded by the challenge of organizing with white socialists who at the time could not see past their anti-blackness to form effective solidarity and build a functional coalition. And this pattern has never stopped repeating, which is illustrated by this excerpt from Eugene Debs that's in the book. In capitalism, the Negro question is a grave one and will grow more threatening as the contradictions and complications of capitalist society multiply, Debs allowed. But this need not worry us. Let them settle the Negro question in their way if they can. We have nothing to do with it, for that is their fight. Debs here exemplified the way in which even radical white people who called for a working class revolution against capitalism could simultaneously distance themselves from the specific challenges facing the most oppressed segment of the working class. I'm bringing this up because I want to show that this is an infinite loop at this point. White leftists with little to no racial analytical frame can't help but censor their sensibilities, even in the face of obvious red flags. Or
This is 100% accurate. Okay? It's true. What do I always fucking say? There is no path to socialism, to developing socialism in this country without black socialism. Capital B, black socialism. Straight up. That's it. Black people are a obviously fundamentally important part of the American working class. But beyond that, they've also been at the forefront of every civil rights and every working man's struggle in this country historically. Okay? And yes, given the unique nature of anti-blackness in this country, because the white supremacist shape always takes the form of anti-blackness at the end of the day. This doesn't mean that like anti-brown behavior is not also baked into the system. Islamophobia is also not baked into the system. But anti-blackness is very specific. It has been a fundamental plank of American culture, American existence, and therefore it needs to always have its own care and consideration.
clearly better options if they don't appeal to their aesthetics and need to censor themselves. why have we centered Graham Platner when we have Chris Robb, who, from what I understand, is the furthest left candidate the Democrats have ever had in any political race? And he low-key still fits the gruff leftist daddy kink that so many of y'all seem to like. Another face that I haven't seen on my feed at all, and I had to get from somebody else, is Charles Booker. Booker has as progressive an agenda as you can have in mainstream politics and is in a very vulnerable red state that could use a lot more attention and support from the online left. And
the only thing I'll say here is the electoral calculation for Graham Platner it looked far better than Booker. That's it. I mean, Booker's dope. I've talked about Charles Booker. I've talked about how, I would love to.